more to us than the words we say, the games we play. Can we know that we're not dreaming?
Alright viewers, this is Fedora Reshiram here. And today, if you noticed from the intro, we're going to try and tackle balancing Yu-Gi-Oh! Oh boy, this is going to be fun. Now, I'm going to be honest here, kiddies. I am not a professional balance expert. And for a card game like Yu-Gi-Oh!, the ship of balancing has long since gone and sunk with how many powerful effects. Turn 1 boards that end on several Omni-Negates and heavy attacking boss monsters that almost seem to do, well, everything on their own. And even some decks that play during the opponent's turn there are in the game. This is pretty much impossible to balance outside of banning, limiting, semi-limiting cards. And even then, it doesn't always work. Now, I'm not going to try and balance this for a competitive scene because it's too big of a headache. And considering that if you're trying to be competitive and you're doing your best to win, for a card game, that means using the strongest cards often. However, there is a casual mode that many turn to for fun, stress-free duels, but are often finding themselves pitted against really powerful decks that they don't want to duel against to begin with in ranked. For example, a casual duelist wanting to have some fun with his pure Crystal Beast deck hops into casual mode to give it a go, and he's met with a hardcore Flu Wanderers deck. When he begins his move, his opponent proceeds to banish the first monster the Crystal Beast player summons, goes through his first turn's moves during his opponent's turn, and tributes his opponent's spell or trap cards that they have played. Instead of a fun, casual experience where both duelists got to play, the Flu Wanderers player got to play, and the Crystal Beast player could only sit there and, well, you get it. They could only sit there and watch. Now, regardless of if the game is competitive by nature, players who are just looking to have fun and not have serious, overly competitive duels are often shoved aside, told to get good, or play meta, or play with your friends, because that's just how it is. And for a beginner, getting into Yu-Gi-Oh! Is extremely hard when you don't have a casual training ground to practice or learn. Tutorials can only go so far and do not prepare you for the constant interruptions or counterplays that the opponent can and will bring against you. And when they try to play, they are often steamrolled without mercy. So, with all that said, let's try and balance casual mode, shall we? When I first started this challenge, I thought, well, given my resources, knowing that banning, limiting, semi-limiting cards isn't going to work and is highly subjective and opinionated, let's try a different tactic, shall we? I was left with a question. How am I going to do this? And the answer I found was the most dreaded answer I could think of.
I'm afraid we need to use math.
You know what? I decided to try a deck weight system after all that effort. And I started out by taking each of the cards' rarities and assigning them a point value. Normal rarity to ultra rarity, going from 1 point to 4 points. After that, I took a sample of decks from me, my viewers, structure decks, and some top-tier decks from Master Duel that are highly popular in the meta at the time of me writing the script. So, after calculating, computing, and doing the math, the numbers are assigned. Each deck has a weight to them, basically a power level. And after categorizing them into 3 separate columns, I found that despite my idea, the decks are still not 100% balanced in a way that offers a fair fight. For example, some of my decks in this image are put against decks that my viewers have that don't stand a chance against them, and even against each other. My viewers' Crystal Beast deck does not stand a chance against my Dragon Maids or against another viewer's Trap Tricks deck. Likewise, my old Limit 1 Festival deck does not stand a chance against my own Dragon Maids or against my viewer's Evil Twin deck. Also, while the higher tier decks are somewhat separated, they are also going against decks that aren't really meant for those top tier decks, such as a viewer's Sayteller Knights and another viewer's Incantation deck. They might not want to take on a full power Flu Wonderies that can bring out Wind Barrier Statue, or a Branded Despia that can summon out Mirror Jade turn 1. Okay, so, we're on the right track at least, but we need to do more. How can we adjust these numbers and set it up so that decks are still paired together for fair duels, while also separating the more powerful decks from more casual decks?
Math.
By adding more math to the equation. So, one way we can do this is by adding points to a deck score via the individual cards it has. Now, I'm not saying every Despia, Sword Soul, Flu Wonderies card needs to be given its own value, but I am saying we can hit the meta staples of the dueling world, and using the limited and semi-limited cards to our advantage. Now, these cards are limited, semi-limited, or extremely popular in every deck because of their power, versatility, and above all, splashability, being able to be put into nearly any and every deck, both past, present, and future. The only limitation is a duelist's reasoning for including or not including them into their decks. For meta staples, we will use the term staples to represent how popular or how splashable a card is. While many powerful decks use Crystron Hulk or Verte Anaconda, not every deck uses those two monsters. But Ash Blossom, Monster Reborn, and Called by the Grave are cards that, 2 out of 3 you are certain to find in almost any and every deck these days. We can expand the staples list to include more and more cards, or even remove certain cards as time goes on. But for each staple a deck has, we can add 20 points to its power level. For limited cards, since these cards are so powerful that only one copy of it can be allowed in any deck at any time, we can add a whopping 100 points for each limited card is in a deck. For the semi-limited cards, while not limited or unlimited, since they're still strong enough to be restricted, they can be given a reasonable 50 points per card. Not as much as the limited cards, but also not overly priced. Now, since many top-tier meta decks use a large collection of these cards in many combinations, this is often where a deck's weight is found, because they're needed to counter other meta staples, limited or semi-limited cards found in what we consider meta decks. Now, with these numbers, we do some more calculating, adjust the range decks meet one another, and bam! We have our average range of decks, ranging from the extremely basic and casual to the highly competitive and meta-defining. Now, we can adjust this even further to further separate decks, but as we can see from this basic grouping I made, the extremely basic and out-of-the-shop structured decks are still grouped together for those learning the game. At the same time, in the second group, those with experience and running casual archetypes and casual themed decks can face each other in, reasonably fair duels. In our third column, the decks that have more powerful archetypes, as well as more powerful collections of cards, are taking each other on and can further be separated with a bit more effort. Finally, over on the far end, the extremely powerful, often seen as copy-pasted meta decks seen on Master Duel Meta's website, or even just popular archetypes based on recently released packs, and filled with popular and powerful cards, are now separated into their own tier thanks to their extremely high value. To further separate, we can divide them into even more groupings to establish more fair and fun duels for all players alike. Beginners just forming these basic thrown together decks will have their own little playground. The semi-experienced duelists will be able to, try out their ideas and learn their decks in their own little corner. Those who are making pure archetype builds can have their own fun as well. Those with average or above average skill and roughly average or above average decks found in ranked will often be able to try out their new ideas and test out their new strategies in their little corner. The highly ranked and highly invested players with powerful decks and cards are now separated to where they can compete and play in a stress-free environment. And finally, those who have tournament level or powerful decks that are basically defining the meta or defined by the meta cannot fight anyone but those with similarly powerful decks. The decks can now be evenly matched against one another, and our poor casual Crystal Beast player will not be forced to play against an overly competitive Flu Wanderer player who jumps into casual to pub stomp, or is a new Flu Wanderers player looking to practice their combos. Now, this weight system helps separate those who hop into casual with suboptimal cards in their decks compared to those with multiple meta staples in theirs. But this system isn't perfect. There's still certain strategies, archetypes, and decks that can abuse it, but if necessary, additional stipulations can be added to improve it to continue making casual as fair as possible. What this system does do, though, is it separates duelists who use highly popular meta staples that are found in multiple decks and are known to be used outside of their respective archetypes, based on those effects that they have. For example, not every deck uses Verte Anaconda, but Verte Anaconda is often used to instantly bring out fusion monsters that are found in nearly every possible deck. The higher up you go, the more popular and more often you'll see Verte Anaconda splashed into multiple decks. Ranked and casual mode are two separate modes. While one should be treated as the serious game mode, the other is often treated as the testing ground for duelists using new decks. Those decks often being powerful meta decks to test their plays. While there's nothing wrong with that, duelists looking to just play and have fun with their favorite cards in a casual environment, even if they aren't that good, should not be paired up with these super hardcore competitive decks. Likewise, those duelists with the competitive mindset don't feel any joy or sense of accomplishment from going into a full board of negates, boss monsters, and powerful 2500 attack beat sticks with hand traps versus a player who can only normal summon one monster and then lose because that was all they could do. But, of course, this is just my idea. I'm only a fedora wearing Reshiram, and I would like to hear what you think of my idea. Would you add to it? Would you change it? Would you have a better idea? Tell me below. Share this video around, see if others like my idea. I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye!
When you've reached the point where you can't go on, just come to me, you'll be safe from harm. If you trust in me, then I'll trust in you. There's nothing more that I need to do. If you put your hands in front of mine, we'll be shining through.